The rain hammered down so hard that Violet Winters could barely see 3 feet ahead of her horse, and when the animal stumbled for the third time in as many minutes, she knew they would not make it much farther without shelter. She had been riding for 2 days straight through Nevada territory. Her supplies dwindled to nothing, her dress soaked through until it clung to her skin like a second layer of misery. And somewhere in the storm she had lost the trail that was supposed to lead her to the next town. The year was 1878, and out here in the wilderness between scattered settlements, a woman alone was as good as dead if she could not find help soon. Through the sheets of rain, a dim light flickered in the distance. Violet urged her exhausted mare forward, squinting against the downpour until the shapes of buildings began to emerge from the gloom. It was not a town, just a lone ranch house with a barn set back from it, but it was civilization, and right now that meant everything. She slid from her saddle with numb legs and led her horse toward the covered porch, her boots squelching in the mud with every step. Before she could knock, the door swung open, and a man stood silhouetted against the warm glow of an oil lamp. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes that assessed her with a mixture of surprise and concern. "Please," Violet said, her voice cracking from exhaustion and cold. "I need help. My horse needs rest, and I have nowhere else to go." The man stepped aside without a word, gesturing for her to come inside. Violet hesitated only a moment before crossing the threshold, dripping water all over his clean wooden floors. He disappeared for a moment and returned with a thick blanket, which he draped over her shoulders. "Name is Nathan Cross," he said, his voice deep and measured. "You picked a hell of a night to be out riding." "I did not have much choice," Violet replied, her teeth chattering. "I was heading to Elko, but I got turned around in the storm." Nathan moved to the fireplace and added another log, sending sparks dancing up the chimney. "Elko is about 15 miles northeast of here. You would not have made it in this weather." He looked at her more carefully now, taking in her sodden dress, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she swayed slightly on her feet. "When did you last eat?" Violet tried to remember. "Yesterday morning, I think." Without another word, Nathan went to his kitchen and began pulling out bread, cheese, and cold chicken. He set them on the table and poured her a cup of coffee from the pot that had been warming on the stove. "Sit down before you fall down." She did as he said, too tired to argue, and ate with the desperate hunger of someone who had been pushing their body beyond its limits. Nathan busied himself with stoking the fire and did not watch her eat, which she appreciated. There was something kind in that small gesture of privacy. "I should see to your horse," he said after a few minutes. "I can help." Violet started to stand, but Nathan held up a hand. "You finish eating. I will be back in a few minutes." He pulled on an oilskin coat and disappeared into the storm. Violet sat in his warm house, wrapped in his blanket, eating his food, and felt the first stirrings of something she had not felt in months: safety. She had left Missouri after her father died, leaving behind debts she could not pay, and a man who thought her father's obligations transferred to her. The West had seemed like freedom, but freedom came with a price, and she had been paying it every day since. When Nathan returned, water streaming from his coat, he hung it by the door and ran a hand through his wet hair. "Your mare is settled in the barn. She is exhausted, but she will be fine with rest and food." "Thank you," Violet said softly. "I cannot pay you right now, but I can work. I can cook, clean, mend clothes, anything you need. I will work in trade for a dry roof until the storm passes and I can move on." Nathan studied her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. It was not pity exactly, but perhaps understanding. "How far are you running?" he asked quietly. Violet met his eyes. "Far enough." He nodded slowly, accepting that answer. Then he did something that shocked her to her core. "You take the house. I will sleep in the barn." "What?" "No, I could not possibly. The house has a good stove, a real bed, and walls that do not leak. The barn has hay and horse blankets. You need the house more than I do right now." His tone left no room for argument. "But this is your home," Violet protested. "And I am offering it to you," Nathan said simply. "The barn suits me fine. I have slept in worse places." Violet felt tears prick at her eyes, and she blinked them back fiercely. She had grown used to suspicion, to men who wanted something from her, to doors closed in her face. This unexpected kindness threatened to undo her completely. "I do not understand why you would do this for a stranger." Nathan looked at the fire, his profile sharp in the flickering light. "My sister traveled west alone 3 years ago. She never made it to California. I do not know what happened to her, but I know she must have needed help along the way. Maybe someone gave it to her, maybe they did not. I like to think someone showed her kindness." He turned back to Violet. "So I am showing it to you." The tears came then, silent and hot, sliding down her cheeks. Nathan politely turned away and began gathering a few items into a canvas bag. "There is a bolt on the door. Use it. I will come by in the morning to check on you and we can figure out what comes next." "Thank you," Violet whispered. "Thank you." He nodded once and headed for the door, then paused. "What is your name?" "Violet. Violet Winters." "Well, Miss Winters, welcome to Cross Ranch. It is not much, but it is dry and it is safe." Then he was gone, back out into the storm, leaving her alone in his house. Violet sat for a long time, staring at the fire, trying to process what had just happened. She had offered to work for shelter, expecting to be given a corner of the barn or maybe a shed. Instead, this cowboy had given her his home and taken the barn for himself. It made no sense, and yet it made perfect sense in a way she could not quite articulate. There was a code out here, she had heard, an unwritten law of hospitality and help. She was seeing it in action, and it moved her more deeply than she could have imagined. Eventually, she rose and explored the house. It was a simple structure, one main room that served as kitchen and living area, and a smaller bedroom off to the side. Everything was neat and well maintained, the mark of a man who lived alone but took pride in his space. The bedroom had a real bed with a quilt, a washstand, and a small dresser. Violet touched the quilt gently, marveling at the craftsmanship. It had been made by a woman's hands, she was certain. Perhaps Nathan's mother or his lost sister. She found a nightshirt folded in the dresser, clearly too big for her but clean and dry. After changing out of her soaked dress and hanging it near the fire to dry, she crawled into the bed and pulled the quilt up to her chin. The mattress was stuffed with straw and covered with a feather tick, more comfortable than anything she had slept on in weeks. Outside, the rain continued its assault on the roof, but inside she was warm and safe and, for the first time in a very long time, able to let down her guard. Sleep claimed her almost instantly. When Violet woke, weak sunlight was filtering through the window and she could hear birds singing. The storm had passed. She rose quickly, feeling guilty for sleeping so late, and dressed in her mostly dry clothes. They were wrinkled and stained from travel, but they would have to do. She rebuilt the fire and found Nathan's pantry better stocked than she had expected. There was flour, salt, sugar, coffee, dried beans, bacon, and even a few precious eggs. She set about making breakfast with the ease of long practice. She was just pulling biscuits from the oven when there was a knock at the door. "Come in," she called. Nathan entered, brushing hay from his clothes. His hair was tousled from sleep, and there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he had not rested as well as she had. "Morning," he said. "I hope you slept better than your mare. She is already trying to break out of the stall to get to the grass. Violet smiled. I slept very well, thank you. And I made breakfast. It is the least I can do. Nathan's eyes widened slightly at the spread on the table. Fluffy biscuits, fried eggs, bacon, and fresh coffee. You did not have to do all this. You gave me your house. I think breakfast is a small repayment. She poured him coffee and gestured for him to sit. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Nathan spoke. So what is your plan? Still heading to Elko? Violet hesitated. I do not know any more. I was going there because I heard they might need help at the boarding house, but I have no guarantee of work when I arrive, She trailed off, unsure how much to share. And you are running from something, Nathan finished gently. She nodded. From someone. A man back in Missouri who thinks I belong to him because my father owed him money. When Papa died, this man, Albert Griggs, decided the debt transferred to me. He wanted me to marry him to settle it. I refused and left in the night. Nathan's jaw tightened. He has no legal right to you. Legal rights do not always matter when a man has money and influence, Violet said bitterly. He told everyone in town that we were engaged, that I was his intended. When I left, he sent men after me. I have been staying ahead of them, but I do not know how long I can keep running. You do not have to run anymore, Nathan said quietly. You can stay here. Violet looked at him in surprise. Stay here, but I barely know you and you barely know me. I know you are a good cook, you are honest, and you are in trouble. That is enough. He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. I am serious, Miss Winters. This ranch is isolated enough that no one comes by without a reason. You could stay and help me run it. I do the ranching and heavy work, you handle the house and cooking. It would be a fair trade. You are offering me a job, Violet asked slowly. I am offering you a place to stay and a way to earn your keep that does not involve marrying some bastard who thinks he owns you. Nathan's voice was fierce now. I will not lie and say it is an easy life. This is a small operation, just me and a few head of cattle. But it is honest work and you would be safe. Violet felt hope flutter in her chest, fragile and bright. Why are you doing this? You do not know anything about me. I know enough, Nathan said. And maybe I am tired of being alone out here. Maybe I could use the help and the company. Does there have to be more reason than that? She studied his face, looking for signs of deceit or hidden motives, but found only sincerity. Nathan Cross was exactly what he appeared to be, a decent man offering help to someone in need. It seemed too good to be true, which made her wary, but she was also exhausted from running and desperate for a place to catch her breath. I will stay for a while, she said finally, until I figure out my next move, but I pull my weight. I will not be a charity case. Nathan's face relaxed into a smile and it transformed his whole appearance. He was handsome, she realized with a start, in a rugged, weathered way. Fair enough. We can start today. I will show you around the ranch and you can tell me what you need to make the house work better for you. They spent the morning walking the property. Cross Ranch was indeed small, about 160 acres of grazing land with a creek running through it. Nathan had about 50 head of cattle, mostly Herefords, that he planned to drive to market in the fall. He also kept chickens, a milk cow, and 2 horses besides her mare. The work was constant but manageable for one person, though he admitted it would be easier with help. I inherited this land from my uncle 2 years ago, Nathan explained as they walked along the creek. He never married, had no children, and I was his only living relative after my parents died. I had been working as a ranch hand in Wyoming, so I came down here to claim it, been building it up ever since. It is a good piece of land, Violet observed. The grass was lush from the recent rain and the creek ran clear and cold. You could expand if you wanted. Maybe someday. For now, I am focused on making it profitable enough to sustain itself." He glanced at her. "What about you? Where did you learn to cook like that?" "My mother taught me before she died. I was 12 when she passed, and after that I kept house for my father. He was a clerk, not wealthy but comfortable. Then he got sick 3 years ago and could not work. We went through our savings, then started borrowing. He died last winter, and I discovered just how much debt he had accumulated." Violet's voice was steady, but Nathan could hear the pain underneath. "I am sorry," he said. "So am I. But being sorry does not change anything. I had to leave or become Griggs's property. So I left." They walked in silence for a while, following the creek back toward the house. Nathan pointed out landmarks and boundaries, and Violet committed them to memory. She was starting to see the shape of what her life could be here, at least temporarily. It would be hard work, but she was not afraid of that. And Nathan seemed like a good man, the kind who kept his word. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a routine. Nathan rose before dawn to tend the animals and check the fences. Violet made breakfast, packed him a lunch, and spent her days cleaning, mending, and improving the house. She discovered he had been living in a state of bachelor disarray, with mended clothes that needed remending and pantry organization that made no sense. She set about fixing these things with quiet efficiency. Nathan continued sleeping in the barn, despite Violet's repeated offers to switch back. "You need the house more than I do," he always said. "Besides, I am used to the barn now." It was not entirely true. Violet could see the fatigue in his face some mornings, the way he moved a little stiffly after a night on hay with only horse blankets for warmth. But he was stubborn, and she learned not to push too hard. Instead, she focused on making his meals hearty and hot, on keeping his clothes in good repair, on making the ranch feel like a home rather than just a place to sleep. They talked in the evenings after the work was done, and before Nathan retreated to the barn. She learned that he was 26, 3 years older than her. He had grown up in Colorado, the son of miners who died in a collapse when he was 16. He had been working ranches ever since, saving money and learning the trade. His sister, Molly, had been 2 years younger, full of dreams about California and the ocean. When she left to chase those dreams, Nathan had tried to stop her, but she would not listen. Her letters had stopped coming after 6 months, and despite his efforts to find her, she had vanished into the vastness of the West. "I still look for her," he admitted one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Every time I go to town, I ask if anyone has seen a woman matching her description. I know she is probably gone, but I cannot stop hoping." Violet reached over and squeezed his hand briefly. "Hope is not a bad thing. Sometimes it feels like torture," Nathan said quietly. She understood that. She had hoped her father would recover, hoped the debts were not as bad as they seemed, hoped Griggs would leave her alone. Hope had disappointed her at every turn, but she was learning a different kind of hope here, something quieter and more grounded. The hope that a good day's work would lead to a good meal and a warm bed. The hope that kindness existed in the world. The hope that maybe, just maybe, she had found a place where she could stop running. One morning in late July, Nathan came back from checking the northern fence line with news. "There is a ranch auction in Elko next week. I am thinking of going to see if I can pick up some more cattle cheap. Would you like to come along?" Violet hesitated. Part of her was terrified of going to town, of being seen, of somehow being found. But another part was desperate for human contact beyond Nathan, for a change of scenery, for the reminder that the world was bigger than this isolated ranch. "Yes," she said finally. "I would like that. I need fabric for new curtains anyway and some other supplies." Nathan looked pleased. "We will make a day of it. There is a decent hotel restaurant we can eat at, and I promise you will be safe. I will be with you the whole time." The idea sent an unexpected flutter through her stomach. Over the past weeks, she had grown comfortable with Nathan, even fond of him. He was reliable, hardworking, and had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard sometimes. But there was something about the thought of going to town together, of being seen as a pair, that made her aware of him in a new way. She pushed the feeling aside and focused on her preparations. She washed and pressed her best dress, a dark blue calico that had survived the journey better than most of her clothes. She braided her blonde hair into a neat coronet and even found a bonnet that was only a little worse for wear. When Nathan saw her the morning of the trip, dressed and ready to go, something flickered in his eyes that made her breath catch. "You look nice," he said, his voice a little rough. "Thank you," she replied, suddenly shy. "So do you." He had cleaned up as well, wearing his best shirt and a vest, his dark hair combed back. They looked like a respectable couple heading to town, and Violet tried not to think too hard about what that meant. The ride to Elko took about 3 hours, and they talked easily the whole way. Nathan told her stories about some of his more colorful experiences as a ranch hand, including a memorable incident involving a bull, a broken fence, and the mayor's wife's prized rose garden. Violet laughed until her sides hurt, and it felt good to laugh like that, free and uninhibited. Elko was bigger than she expected, a real town with a main street lined with shops, a bank, a church, and several saloons. The auction was being held at the stockyard on the edge of town, and Nathan headed there first to register and look over the cattle. Violet accompanied him, watching as he examined the animals with a practiced eye, checking their teeth, their hooves, their overall condition. "That red heifer looks good," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "And that young bull. If I can get them at the right price, it would be a good investment." Violet enjoyed watching him work. He was confident here in his element, and she saw the respect other ranchers showed him. They nodded as he passed, called him by name, asked his opinion on the stock. Nathan Cross was known and liked, and that was worth something in a world where reputation mattered. The auction started at noon, and Nathan successfully bid on 3 head of cattle, including the red heifer and the young bull. He seemed pleased with the prices, and Violet felt a small glow of pride on his behalf, as if his success was somehow connected to her. After the auction, Nathan arranged for the cattle to be held until they could return the next day with a wagon to haul them back. Then he took Violet to the mercantile, where she purchased fabric, thread, some spices that Nathan's pantry lacked, and a small luxury, a bar of lavender soap. The scent reminded her of her mother, and she held it to her nose for a moment, lost in memory. "Get whatever you want," Nathan said when he saw her hesitating over a ribbon. "You have more than earned it." She bought the ribbon, a deep green that matched her eyes, and felt ridiculously pleased with the purchase. They had lunch at the hotel restaurant, a proper meal with roasted chicken and fresh vegetables and pie for dessert. Violet could not remember the last time she had eaten somewhere that was not a trail camp or a borrowed kitchen. "This is lovely," she said, looking around at the clean tablecloths and the other diners. "Thank you for bringing me." "Thank you for coming," Nathan replied. "It is nice to have company." They were finishing their pie when a man approached the table. He was older, maybe 50, with gray in his beard and a star pinned to his vest. "The sheriff." "Nathan Cross," the man said, his voice friendly. "Heard you were in town. Who is your companion?" Violet's heart started to pound, but Nathan's voice was calm as he made introductions. "Sheriff Dalton, this is Miss Violet Winters. She is helping me run the ranch. Violet, this is Sheriff Tom Dalton. He has been keeping the peace in Elko for about 10 years now." The sheriff tipped his hat to Violet. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Winters. You are a brave woman to take on ranch work. It is not an easy life." "I am finding it suits me," Violet said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Well, if you need anything while you are in town, you just let me know. We are a friendly community here." The sheriff nodded to them both and moved on. Violet released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Nathan reached across the table and briefly touched her hand. "You are all right," he said quietly. "I told you, you are safe." She nodded, not trusting her voice. The brief contact of his hand on hers had sent warmth spreading through her chest, and she was acutely aware of how much she had come to depend on his presence, his protection, his kindness. They spent another hour in town, and Nathan introduced her to a few more people. The owner of the mercantile, the blacksmith, the owner of the livery stable. Each time, he presented her as his ranch assistant, and each time, people accepted it without question. By the time they headed back to the ranch, Violet felt something inside her unclenching. Maybe she really could have a life here. Maybe she really was safe. The sun was setting as they rode home, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Nathan was relaxed in the saddle, and Violet found herself studying his profile. The strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the easy confidence with which he moved. She was attracted to him, she realized. It had been building slowly over the weeks, disguised as gratitude and friendship, but it was there, undeniable and growing stronger. "Thank you for today," she said as they approached the ranch. "I enjoyed it very much." "So did I," Nathan replied. And there was something in his voice that made her think maybe, just maybe, he felt it too. That night, as Violet lay in Nathan's bed in Nathan's house, she thought about what it would be like to have this life permanently. To wake up every morning knowing she had a place and a purpose. To work alongside Nathan, building something together. To maybe, eventually, be more than just his hired help. The thoughts both thrilled and terrified her. She had sworn off men after her experience with Griggs, determined to make her own way in the world. But Nathan was different. He had proven that over and over. He did not want to own her or control her. He respected her work and her autonomy. He had given her his house, for heaven's sake. Still, she cautioned herself not to read too much into his kindness. He might see her only as a friend and employee. The attraction might be entirely one-sided. She needed to be careful to protect her heart, because losing this place and this peace would break her. August brought blazing heat to Nevada, and the work became harder. Nathan spent long days checking the cattle and ensuring they had enough water from the creek. Violet tended the garden she had planted, preserved vegetables for the coming winter, and kept the house as cool as possible by closing the shutters during the heat of the day. They were both exhausted by evening, but they still found time to sit on the porch and talk as the temperature dropped. One evening, Nathan brought up a topic that surprised her. "Have you given any thought to what you will do when winter comes?" Violet looked at him in confusion. "I assumed I would stay here if that is still acceptable to you." "It is more than acceptable," Nathan said quickly. "But winter out here can be brutal. We might be snowed in for days at a time, and I—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "And what?" Violet prompted. "And I am still sleeping in the barn," Nathan said. "That is fine now, but when winter comes it is going to be cold, dangerous cold." Violet felt her cheeks heat. She had been trying not to think about this problem, but he was right. She could not let him freeze in the barn while she had the warmth of the house. "Then we need to find a different solution," she said carefully. Nathan nodded. "I have been thinking about building an addition onto the house. Another room that could be a bedroom. It would take most of what I made from this year's cattle sale, but it would be worth it. Then we would both have proper shelter." "That seems like a reasonable plan," Violet said, relief flooding through her. An addition meant she could stay. It meant Nathan was planning for her to be here long term. When would you start building? After the fall cattle drive. I will have the money then, and the weather should still be good enough for construction. He looked at her seriously. But that means we have to make it through the fall and early winter with the current setup. I am thinking we might need to share the house once the cold really sets in. I would sleep out here on the floor by the fireplace, and you would keep the bedroom. It is not ideal, but it is better than me freezing to death in the barn. Violet knew he was right, but the thought of sharing the house with him, even with separate sleeping spaces, made her pulse quicken. That makes sense, she managed to say. We are both adults. We can be sensible about this. Exactly, Nathan agreed, but there was a tension in his shoulders that suggested he found the prospect just as unsettling as she did. They did not speak of it again, focusing instead on the immediate work of high summer. But the knowledge that winter was coming, that their living situation would have to change, hung between them like a promise or a threat, depending on how she looked at it. In early September, Nathan prepared for the cattle drive. He would take most of his herd to market in Carson City, a journey of about a week there and back. He hired 2 temporary hands to help with the drive, young men from Elko looking for work. Violet met them briefly before they left. Jack, who was barely 20 and talked too much, and Sam, who was older and quiet, with sad eyes that suggested he had seen more of life than he wanted. "You will be all right here alone?" Nathan asked on the morning of their departure. He had been fretting about leaving her for days, checking and rechecking that she had everything she needed. "I will be fine," Violet assured him. "I have the rifle, I have food, and the nearest neighbor is only 5 miles away if I need help. Stop worrying." But Nathan could not seem to help himself. "Bar the door at night. Do not answer it unless you know who it is. If anything feels wrong, trust your instincts. And if you need to, take your mare and ride to the Simmons place. They are good people." "Nathan," Violet said, touching his arm. "I will be careful, but you need to go, or you will lose the light." He looked down at her hand on his arm, and for a moment she thought he might say something. But then he just nodded, mounted his horse, and rode off with Jack and Sam driving the cattle ahead of them. Violet watched until they disappeared over the ridge, then turned back to the suddenly very empty house. The first 2 days alone were strange. She was not used to the silence anymore, to the absence of Nathan's presence. She found herself listening for his footsteps, expecting him to come through the door asking what was for dinner. But she kept busy, using the time to do projects she had been putting off, repairing the chicken coop fence, reorganizing the root cellar, making new curtains from the fabric she had bought in Elko. On the 3rd day, a rider approached the ranch. Violet saw him from a distance and felt her stomach clench with fear. She grabbed the rifle Nathan had taught her to use and stood on the porch, trying to look braver than she felt. The rider was a middle-aged man with a weathered face and kind eyes. He stopped a respectful distance from the house and called out, "Hello there. I am looking for Nathan Cross. Is he around?" "He is away on business," Violet called back, keeping the rifle visible but not pointed at him. "Can I help you with something? Name is Bill Simmons. I own the ranch to the east. Just wanted to let Nathan know that I have been seeing some riders passing through the area. Might be nothing, but they did not look like regular travelers. Wanted to warn folks to be careful." Violet's blood ran cold. What did these riders look like? Simmons squinted, thinking. 3 men, I think. One of them was asking questions in Elko about a blonde woman traveling alone. I figured Nathan should know in case they come snooping around here. "Thank you for the warning," Violet said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I will let him know when he returns." Simmons tipped his hat and rode off, leaving Violet standing on the porch with her heart racing. Griggs had found her, or at least his men had. They were close, asking questions. She had maybe a day or two before they traced her to Cross Ranch. She spent the rest of the day in a state of controlled panic, trying to decide what to do. She could run, take her mare and head deeper into the territory. But she was tired of running, and besides, where would she go? She could stay and hide, but if Griggs's men came while Nathan was gone, she would be defenseless. The rifle was one thing, but she was not sure she could actually shoot a person, even to defend herself. In the end, she decided to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. She loaded the rifle and set it by the door. She packed a bag with essentials in case she needed to run quickly. She made sure her mare was ready to ride at a moment's notice, and then she waited. The men came at dusk on the fourth day. 3 of them, just as Simmons had said, riding up to the house with the casual arrogance of men who expected to get what they came for. Violet watched them from the window, her mouth dry with fear. She recognized one of them, Carl Hoffman, one of Griggs's hired thugs from Missouri. "We know you are in there, Miss Winters," Hoffman called out. "Mr. Griggs sent us to bring you home. You can come easy or we can come in and get you. Your choice." Violet picked up the rifle with shaking hands and cracked the door open. "I am not going anywhere with you. This is my home now." Hoffman laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Your home? You are squatting in some cowboy's house. Mr. Griggs owns you, girl. You have got debts to settle." "I do not owe him anything," Violet shot back. "My father's debts died with him." "That is not how Mr. Griggs sees it. Now you can come quiet and make this easy on everyone, or we can do this the hard way." "What is it going to be?" Violet raised the rifle, her hands surprisingly steady now that the moment had arrived. "I said no. If you try to come in here, I will shoot you." One of the other men, younger and meaner looking than Hoffman, moved toward his gun. "She is bluffing. No woman is going to." The crack of the rifle cut him off. Violet had aimed high, putting a bullet into the porch post just to the left of his head. The man jumped back, and all 3 of them stared at her with new respect. "The next one goes center mass," Violet said coldly. "Now get off this property." Hoffman's eyes narrowed. "You are making a big mistake, girl. We will be back, and next time we will not be so polite." He wheeled his horse around, and the 3 of them rode off into the growing darkness. Violet locked the door and sank to the floor, the rifle clutched in her arms and shook with reaction. She had done it. She had faced them down and sent them packing. But Hoffman was right. They would be back, and next time they might not give her a chance to shoot first. She barely slept that night, jumping at every sound, the rifle always within reach. When dawn came, she was exhausted but determined. She would not let Griggs's men drive her away from the life she was building. She would stand her ground, and when Nathan returned, they would figure out what to do together. Nathan rode in at mid-morning on the 6th day, alone. He had sent Jack and Sam back to Elko with their pay, and he looked tired but satisfied. The cattle drive had gone well, and he had a bank draft for more money than Violet had ever seen. But his satisfied expression changed to concern the moment he saw her face. "What happened?" he demanded, dismounting quickly. Violet told him everything. Simmons's warning, the 3 men, the confrontation, the threat. Nathan's face grew darker with every word, and by the time she finished, his hands were clenched into fists. "They threatened you. They came to my property and threatened you." His voice was low and dangerous. "Did they hurt you?" "No, I am fine. I shot at them and they left, but they said they would come back." Violet was proud that her voice did not shake. "Nathan, I am so sorry. I brought this to your door." "Maybe I should leave before they know." Nathan's voice cracked like a whip. "You are not leaving. This is your home now, and no one is taking you away from it." He cupped her face in his hands, his eyes intense. "Do you understand me, Violet? You are not going anywhere. We will figure this out together." Violet felt tears sting her eyes at the fierce protectiveness in his voice. "But I do not want to put you in danger. I can handle danger. What I cannot handle is the thought of you leaving." Nathan's thumbs stroked her cheeks gently, and suddenly the air between them was charged with something more than just concern. "Violet, these past months having you here, it has meant more to me than I can say. You are not just my hired help. You are my friend and my partner, and I feel the same way," Violet whispered, her heart pounding. "I did not want to say anything because I did not know if you." Nathan kissed her. It was soft and hesitant at first, a question more than a statement. But when Violet responded, when her arms came up to wrap around his neck, the kiss deepened into something hungry and real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Only weeks." Violet asked with a shaky laugh. "I have been fighting this feeling for at least a month." Nathan smiled, that rare, full smile that transformed his face. "Then we have been a pair of fools." His expression grew serious again. "But we still have the problem of Griggs and his men. We need to deal with that before we can move forward with anything else." "What do you suggest?" Violet asked. "We go to Sheriff Dalton. We tell him everything. He needs to know that there are men threatening a resident of his county, and we need to make sure you are protected legally." Nathan was already moving toward his horse. "Can you ride to Elko now? I do not want to waste any time." They made the ride in record time, and Sheriff Dalton listened to their story with a deepening frown. When Violet finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Normally, I would say that debts are a civil matter, not a criminal one. But if these men threatened you and you had to fire a weapon to defend yourself, that changes things. They have committed assault, at minimum." He looked at Nathan. "You are willing to stand witness to the threat against Miss Winters." "I will do whatever it takes to protect her," Nathan said firmly. The sheriff nodded. "All right. Here is what we are going to do. I will send a deputy out to watch the Cross Ranch for the next few days. If these men show up again, we will arrest them. And I will send a telegram to the Missouri authorities. Let them know that Albert Griggs is harassing a woman in my jurisdiction. That should put some pressure on him to back off." "Will that be enough?" Violet asked nervously. "It should be. Men like Griggs are bullies. They push until someone pushes back harder. Once he realizes that you have got legal protection and are not afraid to use force to defend yourself, he will likely decide you are more trouble than you are worth." The sheriff's expression softened. "And if he does not back off, well, I will be happy to arrest him myself if he shows his face in Elko." Violet felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time since fleeing Missouri, she had the law on her side. She had protection and witnesses and allies. "Thank you, Sheriff." "Thank you so much. Just doing my job, Miss Winters. And Nathan, you are a good man for standing by her. Too many men would have turned her out the moment trouble came knocking." Nathan took Violet's hand, a gesture that did not escape the sheriff's notice. "She is worth standing by." They rode back to the ranch with a deputy following behind them. His name was Mike Torres, a young man who took his job seriously. He set up camp in the barn, much to Nathan's relief, and kept watch through the night. Nathan finally moved his things back into the house, sleeping on the floor by the fireplace as he had planned for winter. But now it felt different, charged with the knowledge that they had feelings for each other, that they had crossed a line they could not uncross. That first night with both of them in the house, Violet could barely sleep. She was acutely aware of Nathan's presence just on the other side of the wall, aware that only propriety and circumstance kept them apart. She wanted him, she realized. Not just his protection or his kindness, but him. All of him. And that want was both exhilarating and terrifying. Griggs's men returned 2 days later, and this time they found Deputy Torres waiting for them. There was a brief standoff, with Torres informing them that they were trespassing and that any further harassment of Miss Winters would result in arrest. The men left, but Torres reported that they did not go far. They were camped about 10 miles away, waiting. Waiting for what? Violet asked when Nathan told her, for us to let our guard down, probably, or for me to leave again. Nathan paced the kitchen, frustrated. I hate this. I hate that you are not safe here. I am safer here than anywhere else, Violet said firmly, because I have you. Nathan stopped pacing and looked at her. Violet, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. All right, she said, her heart starting to race. You see a future here. With me, I mean. Or are you just staying until the danger passes and then you will move on? His vulnerability was written all across his face. Violet crossed the room and took both his hands. Nathan, I have not been entirely honest with you. I do not just see a future here, I want a future here. With you, I am in love with you. Nathan's breath caught. You are. Yes. I tried not to be. I tried to keep it professional, to remember that you were just being kind. But you are so much more than kind. You are good and decent, and you make me feel safe in a way I have never felt before. And I love you. The words tumbled out, and Violet felt lighter for having said them. Nathan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. I love you too. I think I started falling for you the night you showed up in the rain, all fierce and desperate and brave. And every day since then, you have given me more reasons to love you. They stood there, holding each other, and for a moment the danger outside did not matter. They had found something precious in the midst of hardship, and they were not going to let it go. Marry me, Nathan said suddenly. I know it is fast and we are still dealing with Griggs, but I do not want to wait. I want you to be my wife, Violet. I want this to be our ranch, not just mine. I want to build a life with you. Violet pulled back just enough to see his face. Are you sure? You do not have to marry me to protect me. I know that. I want to marry you because I love you, because I cannot imagine my life without you anymore, because you belong here with me. Nathan was smiling now, hope and love shining in his eyes. Yes, Violet said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I will marry you. Nathan kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation, no doubt. This was a promise, a commitment, a declaration of a future they would build together. The next morning, Nathan rode to Elko to make arrangements. He spoke with the circuit preacher who was due in town in 2 weeks and booked him for a wedding. He sent telegrams announcing his marriage to a few distant relatives who probably would not come but should be informed. He bought Violet a simple gold ring at the mercantile, nothing fancy but solid and real. When he returned and showed her the ring, Violet felt tears spring to her eyes again. It is perfect, she whispered. You are perfect, Nathan replied. Now we just have to make it through the next 2 weeks without Griggs's men causing trouble. But the men did cause trouble. They started sabotaging the ranch, cutting fences, spooking cattle, even taking a shot at Nathan one morning when he was out riding the property line. The bullet missed, but the message was clear. Griggs was not backing down. Sheriff Dalton came out personally after the shooting. This has escalated beyond harassment. They are attempting murder now. I want you both to come stay in town until the wedding. We can protect you better there. But Nathan refused. If we leave, they will burn the ranch to the ground. I have worked too hard to build this place. I am not abandoning it. The sheriff sighed but nodded. Then I will station 2 deputies here full-time, and I am putting out warrants for all 3 of those men. If they show their faces in Elko, they will be arrested on sight. The week before the wedding was tense. Violet and Nathan were never alone, always accompanied by at least one deputy. They could not have private conversations or moments of affection without an audience. It was frustrating and exhausting, but it also made them more determined. They were not going to let Griggs win. They were going to have their wedding and their life together. No matter what, 3 days before the wedding, things came to a head. Hoffman and his 2 companions rode directly up to the house in broad daylight, ignoring the deputy's commands to stop. They were arrested in a brief, violent struggle that left one of them with a broken nose and another with a black eye. But they were in custody, and that was what mattered. Sheriff Dalton interrogated them and learned that Griggs himself was on his way to Nevada. He was coming to collect Violet personally. Legal consequences be damned. The sheriff immediately sent more telegrams and put out a warrant for Griggs as well. "If he sets foot in my county, I will arrest him for conspiracy to commit assault and murder," Dalton promised. "You have my word." Violet felt simultaneously relieved and terrified. The threat was real and immediate, but at least now it was out in the open. Law enforcement was involved. She had allies. She was not alone. On the eve of her wedding, Violet stayed in town at the hotel, as was proper. Nathan stayed at the ranch with a deputy, unwilling to leave it undefended. Violet barely slept, thinking about the next day and what it would mean. She was going to marry Nathan Cross, the man who had given her his house and taken the barn, the man who had shown her that kindness and love still existed in the world. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Violet dressed in her best dress, which she had altered and improved with lace she had made herself. She pinned her hair up and tucked a wildflower behind her ear, a small vanity. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw a woman who had survived, who had fought for her life and won. She saw a bride. The ceremony took place in the small church in Elko, with Sheriff Dalton, Deputy Torres, and a handful of townspeople in attendance. Nathan wore a new suit that he had bought specially for the occasion, and when Violet walked down the aisle toward him, the look on his face made her heart soar. He looked at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, like he could not believe his good fortune. The preacher spoke about love and commitment, about the sanctity of marriage and the responsibilities it entailed. Violet heard the words distantly, too focused on Nathan's hand holding hers, on the warmth of his presence beside her. When it came time for the vows, she spoke them clearly and firmly, meaning every word. "I, Violet Winters, take you, Nathan Cross, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, honor you, and stand by you in good times and in bad, for as long as we both shall live." Nathan's vows were equally heartfelt, his voice rough with emotion. "I, Nathan Cross, take you, Violet Winters, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to protect you, cherish you, and build a life with you, no matter what challenges we face, for as long as we both shall live." The preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Nathan kissed her to the applause of their small gathering. It was done. They were married. Violet was no longer a woman alone in the world. She was Mrs. Nathan Cross, and she had a home and a husband and a future. The reception was a simple affair at the hotel restaurant, with cake and coffee and well wishes. But halfway through, Sheriff Dalton received a telegram that made his face go grim. He pulled Nathan and Violet aside. "Griggs is in Carson City. He is coming here, probably arriving tomorrow. I have got men watching the roads, and we will arrest him the moment he enters town. But you two need to be careful. Stay at the hotel tonight. Do not go back to the ranch until we have got him in custody." Nathan nodded, his arm protectively around Violet. "We will stay." "Thank you for everything you have done, Sheriff. You are good people. It is my job to protect good people." Dalton tipped his hat and left to make arrangements. Violet and Nathan went up to their hotel room, their wedding night transformed from a joyous occasion into something more fraught. But once the door was closed and they were alone, truly alone for the first time since they had admitted their feelings, the tension melted into something warmer. "Hello, wife," Nathan said softly, pulling her close. "Hello, husband," Violet replied, smiling up at him. They kissed, and it was different now, freed from the constraints of propriety. They were married. They could express their love fully, completely, without shame or hesitation. Nathan was gentle and patient, and Violet felt cherished in a way she had never experienced. This was what marriage was supposed to be, she realized. Partnership and passion and profound connection. Later, as they lay together in the darkness, Nathan traced patterns on her arm. "I keep thinking about the night we met. If you had not knocked on my door, if I had not invited you in, how different everything would be right now." "Fate," Violet murmured, "or luck, or maybe just the kindness of a good man in the right place at the right time. Whatever it was, I am grateful for it." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Violet Cross." She smiled at the sound of her new name. "I love you too, Nathan Cross." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, and for that one night the world and its problems did not exist, but morning brought reality crashing back. Sheriff Dalton knocked on their door at dawn with news. Albert Griggs had been arrested on the road to Elko. He had been carrying a gun and had made threats to the deputies who stopped him. He was now in custody, facing multiple charges. "It is over," Dalton said. "He will go before a judge, and with the testimony we have got from his men and the evidence of his actions, he will be going to prison. You are safe now, Mrs. Cross." Violet could hardly believe it. After months of running and fear, it was finally over. Griggs could not hurt her anymore. She was free. She and Nathan returned to the ranch that afternoon, and for the first time, Violet walked into the house as its true mistress. Nathan carried her over the threshold, laughing at the tradition, and they began their married life together in earnest. The first few weeks were an adjustment. They were learning each other's rhythms and habits, figuring out how to share space in a way that was intimate rather than just practical. Nathan started building the addition he had promised, a new bedroom that would give them privacy and space. But in the meantime, they made do, and the enforced closeness only brought them closer together. Violet threw herself into making the ranch home. She planted more flowers around the house, improved the garden, and even started raising ducks along with the chickens. Nathan teased her about becoming a farmer, but she could see he was pleased with the way the place was transforming. In late October, they received word that Griggs had been sentenced to 5 years in a Missouri prison for harassment, intimidation, and conspiracy to commit assault. His men had received shorter sentences but were also behind bars. The threat was truly over. That night, Violet and Nathan sat on the porch in the cooling evening air, wrapped in blankets, and watched the stars come out. "I can hardly believe it is real," Violet said, "that I am actually safe. That we can just live our lives now without looking over our shoulders." "Believe it," Nathan said, pulling her closer. "You are safe, you are home, and you are mine just as I am yours." Violet rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about that first night?" "When I asked to work in trade for a dry roof," Nathan chuckled. "All the time. You offered to work for shelter and I gave you the house and took the barn. Everyone in town thought I was crazy." "Were you? Crazy, I mean. Maybe a little, but it was the best crazy decision I ever made." He turned her face toward his and kissed her gently. "You walked into my life in the middle of a storm, and you brought light and warmth and love. You gave me more than I gave you, Violet. You gave me a reason to build something lasting." "We are building it together," Violet corrected. "That is what marriage is it not? Two people building a life side by side. Then we are going to build a hell of a life, Nathan promised. Winter came, and with it the cold that Nathan had worried about. But the addition was finished by then, with a proper bedroom that had a small stove to keep it warm. They spent their evenings by the fire, Nathan doing ranch accounts while Violet sewed or read aloud from the books they had bought in Elko. On the coldest nights, they bundled under quilts and talked about the future. How many cattle they wanted to raise, whether they should plant more crops, what improvements to make to the ranch, and they talked about children. Both of them wanted a family, wanted to fill the house with the sounds of laughter and little feet. In early spring, Violet discovered she was pregnant. Nathan was ecstatic, treating her like she was made of glass until she finally told him to stop fussing. "I am growing a baby, not dying of consumption," she said with exasperation. "I can still do my work." "I know, I just worry," Nathan admitted. "You mean everything to me, Violet, the thought of anything happening to you." "Nothing is going to happen to me. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I am strong and healthy, and I have you to help me. We will be fine." And they were. In November of 1879, Violet gave birth to a healthy baby girl with her father's dark hair and her mother's green eyes. They named her Rose, after the wildflower Violet had worn in her hair on their wedding day. Nathan held his daughter with such tenderness and awe that Violet fell in love with him all over again. Being parents changed them, deepened their bond in ways Violet had not anticipated. They were a team now, working together to care for their child and their ranch. Nathan proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with Rose when she cried at night, singing her soft cowboy lullabies, teaching her to smile and laugh. The ranch prospered too. Word had spread about Nathan's quality cattle, and buyers sought him out. He was able to expand his herd and hire a full-time ranch hand to help with the work. The addition of help meant more time for family, and Nathan made sure to balance work with moments of joy. Picnics by the creek, evening rides with Rose tucked in front of him on the saddle, lazy Sunday mornings in bed while their daughter napped. When Rose was 2, Violet became pregnant again. This time, she carried twin boys who arrived early but healthy in the spring of 1882. They named them Daniel and James, and suddenly, the house that had seemed so spacious felt full to bursting with life and love. Nathan built another addition, expanding the house to accommodate their growing family. The original structure where Violet had spent that first night became the heart of a much larger home, and she loved seeing it grow and change with their needs. This was what Nathan had meant when he talked about building something lasting. This house, this family, this life they had created together. Years passed in a blur of hard work and happiness. The children grew. Rose into a bright, curious girl who loved helping her father with the cattle. Daniel into a quiet, thoughtful boy who preferred books to roping, and James into a wild child who was always getting into mischief. They filled the house with noise and laughter and occasional tears, and Violet could not imagine her life any other way. She and Nathan grew older together, silver threading through their hair, lines deepening around their eyes. But their love did not fade. If anything, it grew stronger, tempered by shared struggles and joys, by the knowledge that they had chosen each other and kept choosing each other every day. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Violet on a trip to San Francisco, their first real vacation without the children. They stayed in a fancy hotel, ate at restaurants, and walked along the ocean. It was wonderful, but Violet found herself missing the ranch and the children, eager to get home. "We built something good, did we not?" she said to Nathan as they stood on the dock, watching the ships come and go. "We built something extraordinary," Nathan corrected. "And we are not done yet. We have years ahead of us, Violet. Years of watching our children grow, of building the ranch even bigger, of growing old together." "I cannot wait," Violet said, and she meant it. They returned home to chaos. James had broken his arm climbing a tree. Rose had started a courtship with the new ranch hand, much to Nathan's consternation, and Daniel had somehow managed to flood the kitchen while conducting a science experiment. But it was their chaos, their family, their life. As the children grew into teenagers and then young adults, Violet often thought back to that rainy night when she had knocked on a stranger's door, desperate and afraid. She had offered to work in trade for a dry roof, and Nathan had given her so much more. He had given her his house, his name, his heart. He had given her safety and love and a family. He had given her a life beyond anything she had dared to dream, and in return she had given him the same. They had saved each other. Really, two lonely people finding connection in the vast emptiness of the Nevada wilderness. Together, they had built a legacy that would outlast them both. A thriving ranch, 3 healthy children, and a love story that would be told around the dinner table for generations. Rose eventually married the ranch hand, much to Nathan's grudging acceptance. Daniel went to college and became a teacher. James took over the day-to-day running of the ranch, showing a natural talent for the work. And Violet and Nathan, their hair now more silver than dark, settled into the comfortable rhythm of grandparenthood. On quiet evenings, they still sat on the porch, now weathered and worn from decades of use, and watched the sun set over land they had made their own through sheer determination and love. Nathan would take Violet's hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice, and they would sit in contented silence. "You have any regrets?" Nathan asked one evening when the sky was painted in shades of pink and gold. Violet thought about it seriously, reviewing the years they had spent together. "Not a single one," she said finally. "Everything that brought me to your door that night, every hardship and fear, it was all worth it to have this life with you." "Even the scary parts," Nathan pressed. "Especially the scary parts," Violet said firmly. "They taught me how strong I could be, they led me to you, and they made me appreciate what we have built here all the more." Nathan lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I love you, Violet Cross. I have loved you from the moment you walked through that door, soaking wet and determined to survive, and I will love you until my last breath." "And I love you," Violet replied, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life in more ways than one. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Nathan corrected. "That is what love does." They sat together as the stars began to appear, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful in the harsh beauty of the Nevada wilderness. The house stood behind them, full of memories and life. The barn stood nearby, a reminder of the sacrifice Nathan had made that first night, giving up his comfort for a stranger's safety. The land stretched out around them, worked and loved and made prosperous through their joint efforts. This was their legacy, not just the land or the cattle or even the children, but the love that had sustained them through everything. The love that had started with a simple act of kindness on a rainy night and had grown into something that would echo through time. Years later, when Rose's children asked how their grandparents met, Violet and Nathan would tell the story together, finishing each other's sentences, laughing at the parts that had not been funny at the time. They would tell about the storm, the offer to work for shelter, and the cowboy who gave her the house and took the barn. They would tell about falling in love while building a life, about facing danger together, about choosing each other every single day. And their grandchildren would listen, wide-eyed, learning that love was not just about grand gestures but about everyday acts of kindness and sacrifice. That it was about two people working side by side to build something lasting. That it was about finding someone who saw you at your worst and chose to stay. When Nathan passed away at the age of 78, surrounded by his family, his hand clasped firmly in Violet's, his last words were, "Best decision I ever made." And everyone knew he was talking about the night he gave a desperate stranger his house and changed both their lives forever. Violet lived 3 more years, and in that time, she made sure the story was recorded, written down so it would not be lost. She wanted future generations to know that sometimes the best things in life come from moments of pure kindness, from choosing to help someone even when you gain nothing in return, from being brave enough to accept help when it is offered. On her final day, surrounded by her children and grandchildren in the house that Nathan had given her all those years ago, Violet closed her eyes and thought about that rainy night. She remembered the fear, the desperation, the exhaustion. She remembered Nathan opening the door and offering her warmth and safety. She remembered falling in love with him slowly, then all at once. She remembered building a life and a family and a legacy. And she smiled because she knew that when she opened her eyes again, Nathan would be waiting for her. They would walk together into whatever came next, hand in hand, just as they had walked through life. Two souls who had found each other in the darkness and created light together. The house still stands today, on what is now called Cross Ranch, run by James's grandson. The family still lives there, still works the land, still tells the story of Violet and Nathan. And every time a storm rolls in from the mountains, every time rain hammers down on that sturdy roof, someone in the family remembers and gives thanks for the cowboy who gave his house to a stranger and found his heart in return. It is a story about survival and kindness, about the harsh realities of frontier life and the tender mercies that make that life bearable. But most of all, it is a love story, pure and simple, about a woman who offered to work in trade for a dry roof and a cowboy who gave her the house, took the barn, and in doing so, gave them both everything they would ever need. Their love transformed not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone who came after them. It became a family legend, a touchstone, a reminder that sometimes the most important thing you can do is open your door to someone in need. Because you never know when that stranger on your doorstep might become the love of your life, the mother of your children, the person who makes every struggle worthwhile. And so the story ends where it began, with a knock on the door, a desperate woman, and a cowboy who chose kindness. But unlike most endings, this one ripples forward through time, a stone cast into water, creating circles that spread wider and wider with each generation. The house still shelters the family. The barn still stands nearby, a monument to sacrifice. And the love that started it all still echoes in the hearts of those who know the story. This is the legacy of Violet Winters Cross and Nathan Cross. A love built on trust, sustained by partnership, and strong enough to weather any storm. They found each other on the worst night of Violet's life and turned it into the beginning of something beautiful. They chose each other when they could have walked away, and they built a life that would inspire their descendants for generations to come. In the end, that is what love is, not a single moment but 1,000 small choices, not a grand gesture but a lifetime of showing up. It is giving someone your house when they need shelter. It is standing by them when danger comes. It is building something together, brick by brick, day by day, until you have created a home and a family and a future. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, love is a knock on the door during a rainstorm, a stranger's desperate plea, and the decision to offer kindness to someone who needs it. Because that single moment of compassion can change everything, can set in motion a chain of events that leads to a lifetime of happiness. Violet and Nathan knew this truth in their bones. They lived it every day of their marriage. And when they died, peacefully and surrounded by love, they left behind more than just property and possessions. They left behind a story, a blueprint for how to love well and live fully, even in the hardest of circumstances. Their great-great-grandchildren still work the land, still maintain the house, still keep the barn in good repair. They honor the memory of the woman who arrived with nothing and the man who gave her everything. They tell the story to their own children, passing down the legacy of kindness and love. And every year, on the anniversary of that rainy night in September 1878, the family gathers at Cross Ranch. They share a meal in the house that has sheltered 5 generations. They drink a toast to Violet and Nathan. And they remember that the best things in life often start with the simplest act of human decency. Opening your door to someone who needs help, offering shelter to a stranger, choosing compassion over self-interest. This is the story of Violet and Nathan Cross. This is the story of how she offered to work in trade for a dry roof, and how the cowboy gave her the house and took the barn. This is a love story for the ages, proof that even in the Wild West, even in the hardest times, love can flourish and grow and create something that will last forever. They met as strangers, lived as partners, and died as soulmates. And their love story, simple and profound, continues to inspire everyone who hears it, a reminder that sometimes the best decision you can make is to be kind to someone in need. Because you never know when that kindness will return to you tenfold, transformed into the greatest love you will ever know.